viewpoint from the world. And so if you would just share some of that information and any other thing that you would like to share with the audience today before we let you go.
Well, the website's been completely revamped. It's a heck of a lot simpler now because the other one was getting kind of out of hand because it was growing, organically, a bit like Heathrow Airport. You have a few huts when hardly anyone's flying, and then you're suddenly flying all over the place, and suddenly you've got to add bits, and it don't work. Have you ever been to Heathrow? It doesn't work.
Right.
Well, the new terminal does. The rest of them they're just like a mess. But so my website was a bit like that. So we got a blank sheet of paper and redid the whole thing. And Human Race-Get off your knees. The Lion Sleeps No More is available now, and I do the newsletter once a week. It looks at the world from a different perspective. It might take a subject that's running that week, or it might come from a completely different angle. But it's just what comes to me. I mean, I sit down on a Friday morning and I just wait for something to come to me, and then I follow it through, and it goes out every Sunday. And but the Holly case is obviously available on the site for free, like 99% of the site is, and that has been very, very powerful because it's affected a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have got behind it because of how it's affected them. And very briefly, on my site, you can get the detail. But this is a Down syndrome girl called Holly Gregg who lived up in Aberdeen in Scotland, in what's called the Grampian area of Scotland, and she was sexually abused and raped for year after year after year after year. First of all by her father, and then by a string of establishment figures in Scotland, including a judge. They call them sheriffs in Scotland. And Scotland, as I've been writing about for years, is a major centre of Satanism and paedophilia. It's not called the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry for no reason. And what the Holly Gregg case has done, her and her mother Anne, and a wonderful guy who's been helping them called Robert Green, who's been arrested and bailed for the crime of telling the story of what's happened to this girl. This has kind of started to lift the lid on many, many things. First of all, the scale of Satanism and paedophilia, and those two rings are absolutely connected, by the way, in Scotland, which reverberates into the Scottish Parliament, into the whole law system of Scotland, into Lockerbie, the Lockerbie bombing, into the murder of those children at Dunblane School in the 1990s, when a paedophile and procurer of children for establishment paedophiles and politicians in Scotland, a man called Thomas Hamilton, killed a lot of children and a teacher when he went in and just with 4 guns and opened fire. And that's been covered up because of where the real knowledge of Thomas Hamilton and who he was connected to would have opened up Pandora's box for the Scottish and British establishments. And so all this is running on, and we've got a general election in Britain coming up soon, May the 6th, I think it is. They announced it yesterday. And there are a lot of people coming together now to put pressure on the politicians when they're out canvassing for votes and at public meetings to answer questions about the Holly Gregg case, because the police in the Grampian region would not investigate her experience. The head of the law system in Grampian, a lady called Elish Angeloni, would not allow it to be investigated. She was then appointed the Lord Advocate of Scotland, the top law officer in Scotland, and at that level of the whole of Scotland, she's refused to pursue an investigation. The so-called Justice Secretary, the man who let the so-called, and it is so-called, Lockerbie bomber free in August last year on compassionate grounds, a guy called Kenny McCaskill, he will not have an investigation into it, and so it goes on. And it's interesting with the Lockerbie case because a number of newspapers here now are saying, hold on a second, the Lockerbie bomber, who was let out to go back to Libya on compassionate grounds by this Kenny McCaskill guy, because he had weeks to live with, I think it was prostate cancer. He's still alive and flourishing now, all these months later in Libya. What's going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. The Libya man, al-Megrahi, did not plant the bomb. It was a CIA, British intelligence, Mossad operation, which he was used to cover up by taking the blame for it. He was jailed, and then he had an appeal. And the appeal was heard by a man called Lord Cullen, who was the man who oversaw the so-called investigation into the Dunblane killings of Thomas Hamilton. And there was a massive cover-up in that so-called Dunblane inquiry to stop the truth getting out. And the first appeal of Megrahi, overseen by Lord Cullen, was again turned down and refused. But then his lawyers secured a second appeal, and that second appeal was on the basis of new evidence that had come to light to show how the CIA had paid, and in other cases offered to pay, vast sums of money to people to lie in court and produce planted evidence to have al-Megrahi jailed in the first place for a bombing he did not commit. And this appeal was going to be heard in 2009, and this evidence was coming out. And then suddenly, Kenny McCaskill, so-called Justice Secretary of Scotland, announces that he's going to let the guy out on compassionate grounds. And the deal was, we'll let you out, but you've got to drop your appeal. Because he didn't have to drop his appeal. He could have kept it going, even though he was released. But what he did is drop the appeal. And then you had Obama coming out, outraged that the Scottish government could do this with all the Americans killed in Lockerbie. That was all part of the game. It was all part of the facade to hide the fact that they were letting him go, so the appeal didn't go ahead and this information didn't come out. So when you start with the horrors that happened to Holly Gregg and you start playing it out and all the different connections, some things connect into all this that wouldn't appear to be in any way connecting, but they are. And there's a lot of people not going to let this go now. And we're going to do all we can to make this the can of worms that it has the potential to be for the establishment, not only of Scotland, but also the establishment of the British government.
And the rest of the world.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Going to set a precedence. You know, it does, David.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to tell you, it's commendable. It's extraordinarily commendable because it's time for this kind of stuff. For people's, this is how we peel the onion, so to speak. We get those layers off so they can take those glasses off and start beginning to open up to these new vibrations that are here, or the vibrations that are here, and really start seeing what kind of a world has been created. And only then can a true change really begin for humanity and all of its peoples that are here, and for our experiences, and for the future generations that decide to come and experience this earth as well for a part of their time space, if you will. And this is, you're just doing commendable work. And again, when your book is out, or it's en route, and it's going to be available when for? Well, I know it's available now.
Yeah, you can pre-order it through the website because the way it's going, the first print run, because we're not flushed with endless amounts of money, so you have to have print runs that you can afford because of cash flow. So
sure.
What tends to happen is the first print run goes pretty quick. So if people want from that print run, they need to order. But it's in transit now, and it should be circulating by the end of the month, at the latest, I hope, but certainly by the end of April.
Well, that will be in timely fashion for when everyone is listening to this show, because this will be aired in less than 2 weeks, so it'll be pretty close to the time when it should be out and about, and this will really capture people's attention. And, again, thank you for the work that you do, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with us today.
Pleasure.
As always, I've always enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to some additional ones in the future with you, David.
Okay, Rebecca, thanks. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure, and for the rest of you, don't go away. Thank you, David. Really, this has just been fun. Have a good night, dear.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.